is Ish Klein. You are listening to Wrestling with Poetry, a podcast about wrestling and poetry. This is the first episode, and here is the format. There will be facts about wrestling, and if we get any emails, I will address them on the show. Then I will introduce a poet, after which we will hear a poem from this poet, and finally, in the final segment, I will share my knowledge of events that are happening in Michigan in the realms of both poetry and wrestling. So now that you're prepared, let's start the first section of Wrestling Facts. Fact. In wrestling, there is a state of consciousness called Kayfabe. For those who don't know what Kayfabe is, well, it is spelled Kayfabe. Merriam-Webster defines it as the tacit agreement between professional wrestlers and their fans to pretend that overtly staged wrestling events, stories, character lines, etc. are genuine. So it's commitment to the reality of the performance. I will use kayfabe now in a sentence. It must not always be easy for a wrestler to know what is reality and what is kayfabe. And now I will have a question for you in the listening audience. Is there a word that means the tacit agreement that something is fake? I don't know. All right, now if you have any response to that, send an email, wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com. That's all one word, wrestlingwithpoetry. First guest on the program, Greg Purcell. Greg Purcell is an author living and working in Michigan. Greg's next book will be coming out from Light Rail Press in the fall of 2023. That's exciting. The Fundaments, his first book of poetry, was published in 2015 by Poor Claudia Press. Now that was a fabulous press. The great poet Susie Timmons writes, "The work in the Fundaments will excite your curiosity, and if you are like me, you will return to this book again and again, because when the book is closed, the poems are changing, and each time you open it, something new appears." Fresh Air 2, a chapbook of poetry, was published by 2015 by Industrial Lunch. The New Music, a 2014 chapbook, was published by The Agriculture Reader, a press devoted to poetry and fiction. His poetry has been published in Fence, McSweeney's, New American Writing, Open City, The Denver Quarterly, and Exquisite Corpse. His awards include an Illinois Arts Council Foundation grant and a fellowship from the Juniper Foundation. That's big. Purcell's fiction has been anthologized widely, most recently in a collection edited by Kelly Link, Monstrous Affections, which won the 2016 World Fantasy Award for Best Anthology. His prose and fiction have appeared in New Genre, McSweeney's, Open City, and The Second Hand. He was poetry editor at Stop Smiling from 2007 to 2010 and founded popular reading series in Chicago and New York. Hey, why don't you read us a poem?
Sure, I wrote one. May not be my best work, but I wrote a line the other day when it was so cold in late April. Mm-hmm. And when I opened up my workspace to write a poem for this podcast, I thought, I guess I'll begin with that. Mm-hmm. So here it is. Cold spring day, everything green and strange. What the Italians call dietrismo, the difference between what the world reveals on stage, the light like grease getting into everything, and what stage work's grown behind the heavy velvet of the world's curtain. My friends call it kayfabe, this apparent spring, flowers shimmering beneath a cloak of ice.
Yeah, ice. That's fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being on the show and in person.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk about.
Maybe you might like to answer some of my questions.
Absolutely.
Do you use kayfabe in your life?
Every day, I suppose. You have to present a face to the world, right? I think kayfabe introduces this idea that you're making something up or lying maybe, but I think there's a fine line between the theater you have to present the world with and lying.
Who's the heel in your life?
No, boy. I don't think anyone's the heel. I'm the heel in my life.
Who's the face in your life?
I'm the face in my life.
Is poetry honest?
No. It gets at different truths. I was about to say better truths. It gets at different truths. But it's never good when it's just honest.
Who's your favorite wrestler and why?
Well, I've had to give this one some thought. I think probably George the Animal Steele.
Oh.
Only because, and I haven't looked this up online, I haven't confirmed this information is true, but I thought I read somewhere in the deep past that he was an English teacher. He might have been one of these English teachers who's also a gym coach, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for like early grades.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, in our high school, it was a high school.
Oh, terrific.
Who's just like, I don't know, what do you think Shakespeare was saying here? You know, that kind.
Yeah.
But in either case, he had some engagement with the English language. But as a wrestler, he was literally supposed to play an animal who'd broken out of his cage. I think just because he was kind of hirsute.
Oh, he was hairy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So he sort of groaned and growled and did that sort of curly head slap thing. He was bald.
Ah.
Yeah.
So he's bald and hirsute.
So in terms of kayfabe, I guess I like those extremes.
I like it too. Was he a face or a heel?
Well, I guess that he occupied some liminal space in between where I think often he was getting scared or angry. Mm-hmm. And now and again, I think I remember at least one wrestler patting his head like he was a dog and trying to calm him down. Remember, this is an English teacher in real life.
Brilliant.
I mean, I guess that probably underscores how little these guys were really being paid, even though they were on, back in the 80s, back when I was a kid, they were on lunchboxes and stuff.
Yeah, they were probably not getting very much money from the lunchbox thing.
No, I don't think so.
It was all the no, I'm not going to start because I don't know anything of. But I've heard people get exploited even when they're in the.
You are welcome to denigrate the worldwide wrestling federation to me.
Yeah, right. The Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know. Let me just say this since it's the first episode, and also I'm giving an email so that people can voice things. I know hopefully there'll be a lot of wrestling fans out there who have a lot to say, because I'd like to have your letters on my show and possibly your poetry. But I do not know very much about wrestling. I only know my enthusiasm for it, what I've been gleaning from the web and what I see.
If I can ask you, what makes a poet and a writer interested in wrestling?
I thought in my mind I'm always wrestling, and it works out as a poem.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and in my mind I am always wrestling with the face heel thing, and what I think is real. You know, like you've got these things in your mind that are like epic battle, like my epic battle to like.
It lifts the mind's burdens to be engaged in a suplex.
Yes, a suplex, that's a wrestling hold.
Yeah.
And throw sometimes.
Yeah.
Events in Kalamazoo. There will be an open mic at the Book Bug in Kalamazoo. This is a bookstore. The Book Bug has open mic night at the Table of Contents Cafe. That's Thursday, May 25th, and it begins at 5 p.m. Now, the address to get there is 3019 Oakland Drive, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Zip code 49008. It's a really good bookstore. They have a good poetry selection and they have interesting events. So I do endorse that. A wrestling event. Here we have a big event June 3rd at Ruggers Up and Under, which is 711 West Michigan. West Michigan Avenue. I knew that's what it was, but I was like, Ruggers Up and Under, that's like a bar, but it's a sports bar which has an event area. And Fate of the 8, the toughest tournament in wrestling, brought to you by Independent Pro Wrestling. Doors open at 6, match begins at 7, according to what I'm reading. General admission, $20. If you want to get the front row, it's $25. Kids 10 and under, $10. Hey, have you got a question? Why don't you pose it? wrestlingwithpoetry@gmail.com. I might not believe what you say, but I will definitely consider it, and I will feature your questions on the air. I hope everybody has a really good day and that things are steadily improving. Wrestling with Poetry uses the sound SQ Not So Fast intro from Freesound, created by Guru12192. Licensed under Creative Commons Attributions 3.0. You can find that on freesound.org. The URI number 337752.